Hello everybody, thank you so much for joining me today. I am so excited about today's video. Today I'm going to be talking about my personal curriculum that I have created. If you're anything like me, you are somebody who loves art and loves creating, but struggles a lot with spending a lot of time on their phone and watching content and media instead of actually spending time creating. And so as part of my resolution this year to be more creative and develop more sustainable creative habits in my life, I decided that I wanted to make a personal creative curriculum for myself. And so today I'm going to go over my own personal curriculum, how I made it, my why that brought me to the specific topics and subjects and resources that I'm going to be using for this curriculum, as well as some resources and tips to help you create your own personal curriculum if that's something you'd be interested in as well. If that sounds good to you, let's go ahead and get into it. Before I get into all of the information about my specific personal curriculum that I'm going to be doing, I wanted to talk a little bit about what a personal curriculum is for anybody who's unfamiliar with the idea. A personal curriculum, as defined by Google, is a self-designed, independent learning plan created around your own interests, hobbies, or specific goals. So instead of following a traditional school syllabus or coursework, you're picking the topics, you're setting your schedule, you're choosing your materials, and you're deciding how to track your progress. So you really get to be the creator of your curriculum entirely and decide exactly how you want it to be structured, which I feel like it sounds a little bit intimidating, but I hope that when I go through my curriculum and I provide some resources in the description, it might help doing the process a little bit less intimidating. But essentially the idea is that you are creating your own course and you are doing self-directed learning. I think this has really gained a lot of popularity, especially now, because we spend so much time on our devices and so much time doing things that are very easy in order to gain satisfaction instead of doing things that actually are more long-term satisfying to us but require more friction. And I definitely am 100% guilty of that myself, especially with YouTube. I am such a YouTube fan. I spend so much time on YouTube every day that I really want to develop myself more and become an artist in a sense. I heard this quote recently that for especially a lot of the younger generations, like Gen Alpha especially, spending so much time on social media, you spend more time remembering and being invested in other people's memories than your own. And so I thought that doing this fun project and creating it exactly tailored to me would be something that could really help me answer some of those problems in my life. So I house this curriculum in this section here of my art planner. And before I actually started writing out my curriculum, I did a lot of note taking and just writing out ideas, brainstorming, all of that. And I really wanted to focus on my why, because that really is what guides your whole curriculum and the whole practice that you're going to do. I think it's really important that you have a good sense of what things you want to gain and learn. And I really spent a nice long time thinking about that so that it could inform the rest of the curriculum. I think that really helped me and was integral in creating something that was helpful for me. Okay, so I moved my notes over to the side here because I was actually able to cut this up, print it and cut it up and put it inside of here, which was so nice. I printed this at my local library and I discovered that the A6 size, I guess because letter size is A4 or similar to A4. So each A6 page is 1/4 of a page. So if you print out one page or 4 pages per one page, you can cut them out pretty easily and put them in an A6 size. So I have these printed out just on regular printer paper. And this right here is my syllabus that I created. I had so much fun creating this syllabus. I spent a really long time on it, but I am a teacher, so it makes sense. I do this kind of thing a lot and I think about it a lot because I'm always, working on lesson plans and thinking about how to structure content in a way that makes sense for my students. In the description, I'm gonna have a link to this specific syllabus, my finished one, as well as a template. So if you wanted to use a similar template for yours, you can. This template is very inspired by syllabi that I would have in my college courses. I really wanted this to feel like a legit thing, even though it's something that I'm just doing as a project for myself. So I'm going to be doing this project for 28 weeks. So it's going to start on the 31st of August and I'm going to end it on the 15th of March. So over 6 months, which is a big commitment, but I am somebody that sort of thrives in structure. And I think by having this program so structured, I am more likely to stick to it than if I do something that's a little bit more wishy-washy. So that's what I'm committing to. But of course, if you were to create your own, it does not need to be that long. And then I also want to try to commit to 30 minutes a day of working on my projects and assignments and readings and all that stuff that I've made as part of this curriculum. In this first section, I have my course description and my objectives. So I just wrote a little bit about I just caught an error, so I went ahead and fixed that on here, and I will go through and fix this on the document itself. But I just wrote here about my purpose and sort of vision, my why, like I stated before, for this curriculum that I'm creating. And I think it's really good to have a description because it grounds you in your purpose. And especially for such a long project, I feel like it's really important to come back to the purpose frequently of your curriculum. Of course, if you're doing something more simple, like you want to learn how to garden, it might not need to be as laid out as this, but I think my goals are a little bit more abstract. And so it was really helpful for me to just write out everything here and get my thoughts collected for what I wanted this curriculum and course to look like. So I just talked a little bit here about how essentially through doing this project, which I also, by the way, I titled The Start of the Artist because I feel like this is really a from scratch, like beginner's, attempt here at trying to become somebody who even feels comfortable calling myself an artist, somebody who creates art. I wanted to make it clear that my goal for this was not to have any specific outcome, like I would be able to draw XYZ thing or have XYZ skill set. It was more about developing, like I say here, the mindset and habits of an artist. So learning to pay attention, to be curious, to tolerate imperfection, to follow intuition, to experiment without needing a reason, and to create without asking whether what we make is good. So that is what I have here. And that is the anchor of my curriculum. And then I also put objectives here. If you are a teacher, I'm sure, this is something you think about all the time and you know it very well, but we do a lot of objective writing in teaching. And the idea is that you want objectives that are measurable and that ideally aim for students to be using high-level critical thinking skills. And when I came into starting to write these objectives, I was really thinking about making them very objective, like I will draw XYZ things or I'll spend XYZ hours doing it because that's something that's really easy to measure. But ultimately, I decided that I really wanted to focus more on my mental mindset. And so I will get into it later when I talk about assessments and things and how I set that up in here. But I really just wrote the things that I want to be able to think or feel that are more subjective, it's more me asking myself, have I accomplished this? Can I do this? So for example, cultivate curiosity about the visual world. That's not something that necessarily seems super measurable right off the bat, but it's something that I want to sort of track as time goes on and see if I feel like I'm getting better at that skill. And so I wrote a bunch of things here. Some of the main ones that I really like are allow yourself to make bad art without treating it as evidence that I am bad at art, which is a big thing that limits me from even starting to create anything because I have beliefs about whether I should even make something if it's not going to be good, quote unquote. And then I also have ones that are more based on that idea of wanting to spend less time with those really easy hits of dopamine. So developing intentional artist habits, so replacing the cheap dopamine and stimulation-seeking activities used as coping mechanisms for boredom or negative emotions with active observation, making, reading, walking, and thinking. So I really want to develop that. I don't think as people we spend nearly enough time being bored. I know if I can help it, don't spend any time being bored, which I think is a real problem because that's where the source of creativity comes from. So I want to include that as part of this curriculum as well. Here I have the learning materials listed. So I picked 4 books for this. You could do articles, you could do podcasts, videos, movies. I was really interested in these particular 4 books, which are The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, which I know is a very controversial and popular one simultaneously. Syllabus by Linda Berry, which I have right over here. The Creative Act, A Way of Being by Rick Rubin, and We Need Your Art, Stop Messing Around and Make Something by Amy McNee. So I'm focusing mainly on doing The Artist's Way and Syllabus. I have never done either of those before. I've never done anything like this before. And I thought it was only fair that I do both, because I know a lot of people love The Artist's Way, but also hate The Artist's Way. I know a lot of people love Syllabus. I don't think anybody really doesn't like this book, but I know that they have different approaches. For those of you who are unfamiliar with either of these 2 books, The Artist's Way is a book by Julia Cameron, and it is all about taking a very methodical and, I guess as she would say it, spiritual approach to discovering and recovering your creative self, as she puts it. And it is a 12-week structured program with specific assignments and specific focuses each week. I'm really excited to give this a shot. And then Syllabus is super unique. This book I saw from a video that I'm going to put in the description, a phenomenal video. This book is written by Linda Berry, who is a cartoonist, and essentially it's all of this material from one of her actual college courses on drawing. And it is the most fun, quirky book, and as soon as I saw the inside pages, I was like, sign me up for this. And it really is analyzing the idea of a bad piece of art, or getting yourself to just start creating even as a beginner, which is really what appealed to me about this book, because they have a lot of drawings like this, which I know is what my drawings are going to look like. And just looking at this, I just appreciate so much that it's so beginner friendly, and that also she's able to put these here and like you can appreciate them as pieces of art. And yeah, so I'm really, really excited about Syllabus and to really dig into that. But I am going to start with Artist's Way, so we will see how that goes. I thought it would be good to have a breadth of things and to do all of them as authentically as possible, and then come back and see how I feel about it at the end. So I went through and listed the materials needed, which, as you can see, you need a lot of things for Syllabus, but my hope is to use as many things that I already have for this. And then I've done a weekly roadmap here. So I've split it up into 4 different sections. The first one for The Artist's Way, the second for Syllabus, the third for The Creative Act, A Way of Being, and the 4th for We Need Your Art, Stop Messing Around and Make Something. And I haven't broken down the other texts yet because I was spending a lot of time working on this and I really wanted to just get started and dive right in. So this outline was inspired by Samantha Andrews' breakdown, which I've linked in this document, and I'll also link it in the description as well. But it just goes through and it gives me the dates that I have to complete each task for each week, and gives a little bit of a breakdown about what the focus for that week is, so that when I'm going through each week, I have a nice anchor point to know what I'm supposed to be working on for that week and spending my time doing that week. And then here I have assignments and assessments. So I did give myself a lot of assignments and homework because I am a teacher and I always loved school. I was always a big student. I also know a lot of people are not like that and probably want less structure. So you do not have to do all this to have a personal curriculum. But for myself, I decided I wanted to give myself homework, I wanted to do a monthly check-in, and then I wanted to do a final reflection as well, which this really should be over here. Is anybody else also like this, where they do not proofread their work? I really try to be on top of proofreading things, but so many times in school, I would finish a draft of something, and on the very last draft, I did not read it through one last time before I submitted it. So apologies for that error, and I'll have that fixed in my document that is going to be in the description. So for my weekly task, my weekly homework, I have that I'm going to do daily or weekly homework assignments as laid out by the text section. So for example, for my first week of Artist's Way, I will do daily morning pages because I know that's part of the program already. And then I'm probably going to try to do a weekly artist state and a weekly artist's walks as well. which is something that I might go through and add at some point to here, or I'll just put it in my notebook that I'm going to be using for doing the Artist's Way. And then I also really want to do a weekly community post every week, giving a short description of what I did that week, the work that I did, showcasing some of it, and talking about my experience and reflection on how I'm feeling with how everything's going. And then I really want to do a monthly check-in, and I made a rubric for this, which if you're not familiar with a rubric, this is a very popular thing in the education world. I'm sure if you've had a project or something, you probably have seen something like this before. It's called a rubric. And essentially the idea is that you have over here either an objective, a statement, a question, and then you're rating it on a scale. So I have a 5-point scale here, and I'm gonna go through, and at the end of the month, at the end of the 4 weeks, I will go through and read. So for example, I established, developed, and maintain a consistent creative practice, and then I'm gonna rate myself. Do I think I rarely create and I struggle to begin? Do I create occasionally but inconsistently? Or is it become natural and it's a sustained part of my life? And then I'll go ahead and pick, I'll circle for each one where I'm at, and then I can give myself a score at the end. And then I can also compare it to my previous score. So I want to do one right at the beginning of my project here, of the course. So I have it for 8:30, which is the day before the course starts on a Sunday. And then every 4th Sunday, I'm going to go through and do it again and compare scores and see if I'm making progress. And so that's a really great way that I can, stay, true to my objectives that I've written at the beginning, and make sure that I'm actually accomplishing them, or that I'm growing. And then if I need to make adjustments to the curriculum, I can write about that or think about that. And so this is a good way to keep me accountable to see if the program is working for me. So I created this rubric, and I also have a little area where I can write a little reflection. And then I also put like a little breakdown of the 5 parts of the scale, because I think it's helpful. Like, if I'm at 1, that doesn't mean that I'm failing. It just means I'm just starting to become aware of it. And then at 5, it's not like I'm the best artist ever. I'm just like, it's becoming part of my life, and I'm succeeding in my aim. So that's my rubric, which I had so much fun making. Again, teacher, sort of nerdy behavior. And then for my final project, I guess, I want to do 2 different things. I want to do a portfolio and an essay. So I want to compile all the works that I've created and then reflect on them. I don't know how long I want the essay to be, so I left that part blank, but I really wanted to write an actual essay and sit down and hand write a nice big piece that really encapsulates everything, because I again, am a nerd and really loved writing essays in school. So I'm gonna do that. And then I also really want to make a video at the end. And I hopefully will be making videos throughout the process as well. But I really want to make a final one where I go over everything and reflect on everything that I did. And then this last page is what I call the course tenets and guiding quotes. So I really wanted to have, these are sort of like my class rules or class policies, but really I think about them more as tenets, like they're sort of the anchors and the philosophy. These are just things that I want to remember and keep in mind as I'm going through my program. And I left some room here to add extra ones as well. So I put, first, if life gets busy, I have permission to pause and adjust without guilt. Just knowing myself, I really want to stick to this, and that's really my aim. I have even here, done is better than perfect and anything counts. I really want to try to do something rather than just skipping and doing nothing, but I also don't want to punish myself if I'm not able to. So I have both of those things here. I also have working in third spaces as often as possible. I really struggle to focus at home, working on things at home. Especially nowadays, I feel like we're losing third spaces so swiftly. And I really want to take advantage of those third spaces like coffee shops, the library, the park, and work on things outside of the house as much as possible. And then I just have 2 quotes here that I absolutely love. I just love having some little guiding quotes here, and I'll add some more, hopefully, as the course goes on. I spent a lot of time and effort and research making this. This is my first time ever doing something like this, so I know that I have a lot of room for adding things, fixing things, but I thought I could give some pieces of advice and some tips for anybody who also wants to create their own personal curriculum. I think the most important thing is determining your why, determining exactly what you want to learn, but also why you want to learn it. because this is such a personal thing, I think it's really important to really investigate exactly what your aim is. I really think it's great to get into the mindset of like a curious child. When I was a kid, I loved school because I loved learning. And I think especially as adults in our busy everyday lives, we don't have a lot of opportunity to sit down and like learn things. And there's this great video by Hank Green where he talks about how as human beings, just like we crave junk food because it hijacks the brain and the way we've evolved, short form content and long form content and information in general, that's something that we crave so much. And as adults, we just stop learning. And so some really great questions to ask yourself would be, what topics have always interested you? What's something that you've wanted to learn but you've put off? That's a big one, because this is something I've put off for a really long time. Or what's something that you haven't done since you were a child that you really love doing or learning about? Doing like a nice long form journal entry could be a really great way to think about what you want to learn about and how you want to structure your curriculum. And then once you figured out your why, it's a lot easier to figure out what your description is going to be and then your objectives, which then will guide the structure of your course. And they'll also help you determine what reading materials you want to use. I found my reading materials through just watching lots of really great videos and also through researching on Reddit and also at the library. Librarians are such a great resource. They know so much about books and about research. And if you have a specific topic or idea for what you want to do, if you go to the library and ask a librarian, they can help you find books. So that is a big recommendation. And then you can also get the books from the library for free. So you're supporting the library and you're not paying anything, which is great. So then once you have your learning materials and your objectives, then you can do your roadmap. I used a resource to help me make this outline for somebody who already had a breakdown of the book, but you don't have to make it this detailed or have the weeks written out like this. You could just put, I'm going to do pages 10 to 20 that week, and then give yourself a little assignment to do. I think the most important thing is just making sure that whatever you're doing is aligned to your objectives, making sure that it makes logical sense with each other and the puzzle pieces fit together nicely. And then for assessments, there's so many options for how you can assess yourself. There are so many different kinds of things you can do. You could do a test if you wanted. You could do an essay, you can do a portfolio, you can do an art project, you could do a slide deck, there are so many different things you can do. I thought about the things that I enjoy doing the most in school. So like writing an essay, doing a little portfolio, and those are the things that I picked, but really you can assess yourself any which way you want. And again, if you do something really practical, the final result might just be the final product. So like if you really want to learn how to make clothes, your final assignment might be a dress and like looking at the dress and seeing if you like the dress and like reflecting on what's good about it and what you could improve. But the most important thing I think for the assessments is making sure that it's something that is measurable, that you can actually look at and determine, did I accomplish this or did I not accomplish this? So my curriculum starts on the 31st of August. That is a Monday, and my weeks run Monday through Sunday. So all of my stuff is going to be due for myself on Sunday. And I am so excited to get started with this. I can't even tell you. I'm going to be reading The Artist's Way on my Kindle. So I have this set up and ready to go. And for The Artist's Way, you only need a few things. You just need a pen and an A5 or an A4 notebook. And I put with 250 pages because you're supposed to write 3 pages every day for 12 weeks. So that's how the math turned out. So I bought myself a Stology notebook that I'm going to be using for this project. I bought myself the blue one because I think the blue is so stunning. And that is coming in the mail, so it'll be ready to go. If you've done a personal curriculum, please leave your experience in the comments, any tips, advice, or if you are planning on doing one or interested in doing one, please let me know what topic you're gonna do. Also, if you've read either of these books, Artist's Way or Syllabus, or The Creative Act, A Way of Being, or We Need Your Art, Stop Messing Around and Make Something, then please leave your advice, tips, thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I can't wait to see you guys in my next one. Bye bye.